Hey everybody, welcome to the 13th of August, 2025. It is Wednesday, hump day, and this is what's happening in Santa Clarita real estate. I've been doing some videos talking about the home buying and home selling process. We started at the very beginning, what those first thoughts should be when you're even considering buying real estate. For some people, it's probably not the best fit, so I would definitely stay away if you fit that particular category. You only know that if you start talking to those people around you, see the benefits of it, if there are for you, if they're not, if you're super transient, if you're moving from one place to another and you're really not sticking around anywhere, to be able to recoup whatever that purchase happens to be able to build enough equity to even be even enough to offload that property. In this particular market, it's probably going to take you a while. Even depending, it doesn't really matter where you're buying at this point. If you're in the Midwest, probably even longer. If you're in some of the larger cities or cities close to larger metropolitan areas that have a high buyer drive, maybe it won't take as long. But again, if you're that kind of individual and that rental market isn't enough to sustain that property you buy, yeah, maybe not the best decision. But we talked about loans and lending, property searching, what to look out for, and making those offers. And today, let's talk about some offering processes that I always have in the top of my mind when I have my Zoom Me SCV meeting with our clients. They come on to Zoom and we talk about the best ways to approach real estate. And today we'll get into that contract writing and offering on a particular piece of property. However, let me get into the daily stuff talking about inventory. I think it was 807. Let me find the page. No, 789. 807. Was it 807 yesterday? 800 807 yesterday. You can see the video at santaclaritaopenhouses.com. But today, 789. So the market does flux every single day. We rarely have 2 days that have the same amount of inventory, up a little bit, down a little bit. In some cases, overnight, we'll have many listings close. It just happens to be the law of averages. Some days have more, some days have less. So it depends. I'm not seeing anything breaking the market or causing long-term significance, at least right now. We're watching the real estate market continue to evolve and move. We have new listings added every single day, and listings are selling every single day. Here's that 7-day track record I like to talk about. 10 days, 10 properties. Coming soon, 72 new listings. 105 properties have had their prices changed. This isn't unusual in this market. We're watching as a lot of sellers are readjusting their sales price. Maybe they get in there and they start talking to agents, and agents are overplaying their hand, saying, oh my gosh, yeah, we can get you this money all day long. After they've been on the market a while, they will see that in some cases, buyers aren't willing to step up to that particular level, so then they change the price. Also, price changes can be a strategic method in order for somebody to start to get other offers or kick up that particular exposure for their property. And we see that happening quite frequently as well. You drop the price even just a little bit in the market, and sometimes, boom, you start to get that interest. Those properties rise to the top of the real estate search engines out there. And of course, then you start getting showings again because now you're priced more appropriately, but also the properties start to get more attraction just because there has been a price modification or price change, as we used to call it in the old days. Back on market properties, 20 properties fell out of escrow. 34 properties have gone active under contract. These are properties going into escrow. 42 properties have gone pending. The difference between that, so active under contract typically means what it used to mean, and it still kind of does. If somebody's looking out there, they'll still see these listings depending on the syndication sites they're looking into is maybe just showing active completely, which is kind of misleading. You want to go to one of those sites like Santa Clarita openhouses.com, selfish plug, but on there, any property that is in the escrow process, I don't care if it's pending or active under contract, it's going to show that. It's going to show that it's under contract or pending. It's not going to just show it as free and available, so you don't get misled. But the reason why they put that status on there is typically those particular sellers are very new into the escrow. And that being the case, they would still like the property shown. They would still like additional offers written. Even though they've already accepted one and they're in escrow, there's nothing you're going to do to be able to blow them out unless that particular offer that they've accepted is contingent on them potentially accepting other offers. It could be that the way it was written, even though it's in escrow, they're allowed to entertain other offers. And then in that case, that means that particular buyer probably has some kind of a contingency that's in place where if the seller could find another offer without that contingency, then those people write the offer. They go to that particular buyer and say, listen, Jack, we got another offer, just like we told you if it would happen. We got another offer that doesn't have the contingency that you have. You can still have the house. We can't just blow you out. But now, as per our agreement, now we're going to offer you to get rid of your contingency, or we're going to boot you out of escrow and accept this other offer. Lots of those properties happen like that. Lots of escrows go on like that. So when you're seeing something under contract, don't actually think it's taken. Just make sure your agent does their due diligence, makes a few phone calls, and finds out exactly where it is. That's the thing that real estate's kind of changed from. A lot of agents don't even call the listing agent. I call every listing agent when it comes to showing properties to my buyers. I have questions to ask. The MLS doesn't really cover anything adequately. I want to know what's happening with the property. Do they have any offers? Have they had any offers? Are they in negotiation with offers? Maybe they're about to approve an offer. Maybe they're about to sign off on something. You don't see that indicated in the MLS because they're still within their research area, or trying to proof whatever offers are maybe coming down to the signing table where they're going to agree. And you go look at the property, your buyer loves it, and then they say they want to write an offer, then you say, oh, I'm sorry, they were in negotiations and they accepted an offer. Oh, that's real estate 101 screw up, folks. All right, so knowing that there are different statuses out there, things to watch out for. All right, so we have 47 properties closed this past 7 days, 10 expired, 14 canceled, 12 have been put on hold, and 9 have withdrawn. All right, let's talk about when you find that one property, that one wonderful property. Maybe it's 2 or 3. Some agents are unscrupulous. They will write offers on multiple properties for their clients. When I'm representing a seller, if I get an offer on a property, that's a question I ask. Has your client written on multiple properties? And this is just one of the 3, and the one that they like or don't like the best. It's kind of good going in, so I can go tell my seller. Now, ethically, it's kind of that area. It's a little demeaning. It's a problem, but it does happen frequently. Again, if they get caught, could there be some kind of ramifications potentially on the agent's end of it from an ethical standpoint? It doesn't happen as much in this market, but there for a while, holy Hannah, people write multiple offers, and it's kind of embarrassing. You do this negotiation, you sign off on it, and then you talk to that agent and they call you, or they go dark, even worse. And then you don't have the escrow money deposit. You don't have any further communication. They've kind of fallen off the edge of the earth, as if we're in a flat earth world. And then you really don't know what to do at that point. Then you follow up with all of their bosses and then get to the bottom of it. But ultimately, that's a weak agent that's taken their client to multiple properties, written multiple offers, and their client happened to negotiate one and like one more than the one that they negotiated with you and liked on yours. And I don't like that. That's a problem. Anyway, but people do this. And again, even just asking the question, did you write multiple offers? Most agents come to Jesus on that point and will tell you honestly true. Then you can go and have that discussion with your seller. It's just a problem, though, because if a client has gone through that offer counter offer process, and if you've ever done this, it's not, some properties go through perfectly, so easy you wouldn't even know it. Some properties, there's just a lot of haggle back and forth. And if there's multiple buyers coming into the play, maybe not as much haggle. Of course, you have multiple haggles on different scenarios, but with any singular offer, probably not, because there'll be at least 1 or 2 buyers potentially in that mix that aren't going to give you much trouble and pretty much accept those terms as you lay them out in your counter offer form. When you're looking at all of these, if you're looking at multiple properties, find out one that you really like. Hold on to the other few in backup. Just kind of think, okay, well, if this doesn't work, then we'll be ready to write on this one, and so on. Or you can be completely upfront and say, listen, there's 3 houses my buyers like. They've written on all of them, but they like yours the best. They like you second, like you third. And then your agent can maybe gauge it up and find out what the chances are. But I think the sellers have a right to know that, and buyers need to know going in that that's not really looked at with a lot of fondness when they're writing multiple offers on properties. So watch out for that. So when you are getting ready to write that offer, though, let's say it is the one and you've done as much due diligence as you should have, that's going to be checking on the homeowners association. If there happens to be one, what is that fee? How much can I go up every month? The second thing you want to look at is, does the property have Mello-Roos, special assessments, and what's the current tax rate? Now, current tax rate is probably going to be the same as what you're going to pay. It's going to be the assessed value that's going to be different, because those sellers have probably been paying on the property. Maybe the property hasn't been reassessed at any new value, and maybe it's locked in at, $500,000, 500 grand was the last time the property's value was assessed, and now the property's worth $900,000. When you pay your taxes, or when you're looking at the current owner's tax bill, which your agent through title should be able to pull this for you all day long. Sometimes this isn't part of the seller's disclosure package. In fact, there might be one document in there that's going to carry this, but for the most part, it doesn't really come to the surface. This is something you shouldn't wait to get after you're in escrow. This is something you should know beforehand. Same thing with HOA. You're going to know what the HOA fee is, but even in the disclosure process, you're going to get information potentially about if maybe they got some kind of mailer or letter from the HOA with some kind of change in dues. But I mean, there's really no better way than to contact the source and find out from them. And when you do call the HOA to ask these little critical questions, if you can, closer to making, right about that time you're making that offer, just before, because you want to know, can the fees go up? It could be that they've been dealing with their membership for a while, having them approve an increase in the HOA dues by quite a bit of money to be able to pay for something that's supposed to happen. That being the case, you want to watch out, because they could end up, you could end up going in there. Now you got $300 a month for the next 2 years because they want to get all the garage doors replaced. That's a problem, especially if you don't have the $300 every month to spend. Who does, right? So you want to find out that from HOA. Is there anything pending coming up? Are there any lawsuits that are going to create issues, maybe cause the property to not be financeable in the future? That could impact, your value. And of course, they're not going to be able to see past the singularity, as they say in AI, but at least they'll be able to give you what's going on now, so you can make your buying decision based on that. So moving from there, checking on the HOA, checking on that current tax rate. The current tax rate is also going to be important, because out here in Santa Clarita Valley, in some areas, there's Mello-Roos special assessments. Those are going to carry an extra fee, and in some cases, those fees are massive, painfully massive. And you'll see that the sales prices kind of adjust, because the Mello-Roos are higher in particular areas. So your price per square foot is going to be less in particular houses that have a higher than average Mello-Roos, or even Mello-Roos at all. You'll notice that trend going on, but they still exist. And this is something that doesn't really qualify for the tax deduction, where you would have your mortgage interest being able to be written off on your taxes. Now, that's if you qualify for that. That's definitely a good follow-up for your CPA, but property taxes aren't included in that, unless you have a very clever CPA, but that's something to investigate as well. So finding out what the current taxes are. And then with the Mello-Roos, if you can, just for fun, see when it ends, and then see if it can be continued for whatever reason. That's something else to maybe check out, because in some cases, most cases, it doesn't take a lot to keep them going. So when you buy a property with Mello-Roos, if you're buying it because they're saying next year the Mello-Roos is going to be gone, paid off, you're not going to have to worry about it, I would worry a little bit about it. I would try to have that verified to you by some kind of authority in writing that might give you some kind of ability to enforce it if in fact it was incorrect. How that would work, it's hard to say. But you would basically contact, find out through title if the property has Mello-Roos, and then also find out how it's written and what it looks like, and then potentially how it can be renewed if it will be. But purchasing a property because Mello-Roos is going to be stopping, and that's the difference between this property and something else, I would really take that with a grain of salt. I wouldn't give much credit to it actually being over. Have I seen Mello-Roos that have actually finished and been completed? Absolutely. I've seen many. Stevenson Ranch, some of those areas are a good example, but I've also seen others that just seem to continue and don't stop at the date they say they were going to stop. So make sure you do that due diligence going in. In addition, I would give a phone call to the sheriffs and give them that address or whatever local law enforcement happens to be. That's kind of important. Kind of find out, do they have any crazies in the neighborhood? No offense to non or crazy people, but people, maybe they have a special location. Being a former police officer, there's some neighborhoods that they always have that one guy, and that one guy wears welding gloves and goes to 7-Eleven and gets super big gulps, and then comes and stands out people's kitchen windows and stares inside on their property because there's something wrong with him. If you have that in your neighborhood, at least you move in knowing that. After you get into escrow, after you get through that negotiation process, then banging on the doors of a few neighbors that impact your property, those on either side, those across the street, and those behind, that's super valuable to do right at the very beginning before you start spending money on inspections and appraisals. But part of that offering process, after you do that due diligence on the property, gather as much information as possible during the showing of the property. In fact, even if you have to go back one more time, depending on time frame, depending on the speed of the market, you might go back to the property and have another look and see if it's in fact everything you wanted. Start looking under the sinks if you didn't do that the first time. Pay attention to the roof. Look at the backyard. Look at the front yard. Look at the slope. If it were to rain, where would the water go? And look at how that works. It may be the weep line. There should be a space below the bottom of the stucco on the exterior of most of these homes and where the concrete starts. Some people pour crappy concrete and they got that all sealed up. These are things to look for if you can beforehand. Your agent should have some knowledge in all these different areas. You don't have to start, crawling into the attic at your first glance. Your home inspector is going to do that. But to open up a kitchen sink and look underneath in the cabinet there, not a bad idea. See what kind of piping there is. If you can see that in the garage connected to the water heater, hot water heater, see what that looks like. Look for those cracks in the garage floor. A lot of them are going to have settling cracks. Is that going to impact? Did that go into the slab on the residence? Is there some foundational issue? And when you're walking on the flooring, pay attention if it creaks and squeaks. That's typically just a baseboard issue. The screws not being used, maybe only nails being used. So if you were going to replace, if it happens to be carpet covered, a lot of that can be shored up, not a big deal, but maybe it could be a concern. So that's something to pay attention to. Also, uneven floors, cracks in the exterior and stucco, vertical cracks versus horizontal. Ask your agent all about that. If it has a swimming pool, take a look at that pool equipment, see what's leaking. It should be bone dry over there around the pool equipment. If there's a leak, if you have water on the ground out there, it's not from some sprinkler. It's actually from the pool filters or pumps dripping and sweating. And the pipes are all discolored and look like they've been bleached to death by the sun, never paid any attention to. And you have rust on things, you have the equipment looks horrible. That could be a concern for you. Also looking at swimming pools, looking at the bottom, is the plaster in good shape? Is it not? And a lot of times the plaster not being in good shape doesn't mean it has to be replaced right now. It's just depending on how bad it is, that could be an expense for you in the future, i.e. the roof as well. Looking at it, is everything lined up? Are there bulges? Are the tiles moved? Are they broken? If it happens to have the concrete or ceramic, is that broken? How does that look? Have tiles shifted? And sometimes if it's a 2-story house, if you're up on the second floor, looking at the bedroom windows at the roof itself are a good indicator of what's going on up there. That's also part of that inspection. The home inspector should either drone it or walk it, have a look at the roof, and then denote any broken or missing tiles. Out here in California, we have shifts happening. We have earthquakes that we don't even feel in some cases. Well, the systems pick it up. But these little shakers, they move these tiles around a little bit. And over time, they could tear the paper if they're not attended to. Tiles crack and break. Sometimes people have stuff done that has nothing to do with the roof, requiring people, service providers walking on the roof, and you got some 300-pound, clown like me walking all over the tiles, breaking a few. Again, these things should be cinched up prior to you, at least knowing what you're getting into, what that cost is going to look like. Even if the seller refuses to do it, at least you have an understanding, and you can maybe try to get that done on the request for repairs. But these are all things that you want to look at prior to making your offer if you can. So go in well armed so you know what you're getting into. and make sure that this really is the house you want. Then when it comes to making the offer itself, how much are you going to pay? We'll talk about that tomorrow. That's quite detailed because, to do a lot of research now to really get that super good, very, very close home value to what properties are actually worth. That's not hard, especially with the advent of AI. Before it wasn't hard either, but now there's so much more you can do as a consumer to establish that value. And I'll teach you a little bit about that tomorrow, how to look at sold properties, what appraisers look for, and all that sort of thing. Now, ultimately, if the house is a hot house, not hot temperature wise, but hot as far as viewing wise, on the market wise, people are looking, there's a lot of people interested. Realistically, whatever its value happens to be is going to more coincide with the people that are going and looking at the property. And it could be that if multiple offers exist, multiple people writing offers on this property all at the same time, the seller, if they have a good savvy real estate agent, they could get those offers pretty high and maybe even get those people, depending on loan or cash or whatever, to maybe waive the appraisal. That's tough to compete with, depending on your financial wherewithal. We'll get into that tomorrow, how to make a good offer. But these are the things to look for pre-offer when you're looking at properties. It's important that you protect yourself. All right, so I'm off that soapbox. We will see you tomorrow. I'm Connor with Honor. Go to SantaClaritaOpenHouses.com. And you can check out all the inventory there. I'll post this video there for the daily video. Today's the 13th of August, 2025. I said that. I'm Connor with Honor. We'll see you in the next one. Please let me know if I can help. And I'm here to solve your problems. Be well. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks for watching.